Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 696. Only 4 more episodes to 700. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we began the Reread Saturday feature in 2014 with a reread of John Kotter's classic Leading Change. The list of books we have reread is quite long. I'm going to have to create a list someday. All that said, last week, a person that regularly comments on the podcast indicated they did not really know what the Reread Saturday was all about. So today, to commemorate spring in the Northern Hemisphere and the fact that it snowed today, and the kickoff of the latest reread, Why Limit WIP by Jim Benson, I'm going to share an audio version of this week's entry. As we always say, buy a copy of the book and read Jim Benson's Why Limit WIP along with us. This week we'll also have a visit from Jeremy Berriault, who brings his QA Corner to the podcast. Jeremy and I explored the difference between relative and absolute time. In upcoming events, there's a free webinar coming up, When Prioritization Goes Bad, for the Great IT Pro organization on April 19th, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time through 12:30. There's a link in the show notes. Register. I'd love to see you there. I'd love to have a conversation about prioritization. As you know, prioritization is part of the whole world of work entry, which is critical for being agile, or even if you're not going to be agile, getting effective work done. Reread Saturday, Why Limit WIP, Week 1, Preface, Forward, Introduction, and Logistics. Why Limit WIP, We Are Drowning in Work by Jim Benson is our current reread. Over the last few years, I have found copies of this book in offices that surprise me in a good way. It suggests that leaders and thought leaders are beginning to understand that you can't do more than you really can do. Now, it's a matter of shifting that knowledge into action. Today, we are beginning the reread of this short but powerful book. The book, published in 2014, is only 131 pages long. The book includes an introduction to Meme Machine, the concept of short, powerful books designed to generate conversation and thought, a preface, a foreword, and an introduction, all in a few concise pages. The main body of the book includes 10 chapters, an epilogue, and appendix matter. We'll reread this book in 8 to 10 weeks. I expect to take one of those weeks off and do a road trip for Easter. And I need to control my own WIP. The preface is by Chris Heffley. I interviewed Chris back in SPaMCAST 100, 2010, a few years before this book existed, and we discussed Kanban and limiting WIP. I see a lot of the topics we covered in the interview in his introduction. The idea that requests for our time, effort, and attention are overwhelming strikes home. The modern world creates an environment that screams, pick me, read me, make me, fix me, which incents starting everything possible. Starting more than you can complete is counterproductive. To compete, organizations need to limit WIP. Unfortunately, it's far too easy to avoid the hard decisions and say yes and start things than it is to say no or later. Mr. Heffley's preface is an excellent reminder that all leaders have to actually work at controlling WIP rather than just talking about it. The foreword is by Gene Kim, by the way, co-author of the Phoenix Project. Mr. Kim makes the strong statement that our habits and behaviors of our organizations will take a lot of time and effort and practice to change. In other words, reading a book or having the book on the table in your office isn't going to cut it if we want lasting change. The introduction is our final stop this week. The author begins by making the point that our systems value starting more than finishing. Consider organizational approaches such as matrix management, in which a single person often is being directed by many people, each with different needs and goals. It's easy to see why saying yes and hoping you can deliver is far easier than spending the time negotiating priorities. Even in firms that have abandoned the boat anchor of matrix management, individuals are often tasked to work on multiple endeavors. I use that word tasked on purpose. We'll come back to it in the future. Causing the need to start more work than they finish to keep their managers off their back. Jim points out the knee-jerk reaction to not delivering enough value is to start more work. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy of a cycle of delivering even less value. Once upon a time, I did not read the front matter of books. I have mentioned this before, and while sometimes all the stuff before chapter 1 is fluff, in thoughtful and important books, that's not true. Rereading, I think I actually skipped the front matter the last time I read it. This material has given me things to ponder on my morning walks all week. Next week, we dive into Chapter 1, titled Processing and Memory. Remember to buy a copy and read along, link in the show notes. And this is what the Reread Saturday is all about. I look forward to your participating thoughts, comments, all welcome. Please feel free to reach out to us at spamcastinfo@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to catch up, go over to the blog and search on Reread Saturday. Jeremy Berriault, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thanks for having me.
Jeremy, I've been anticipating this discussion for a long time. Matter of fact, I've been anticipating it so much that it really seemed just like yesterday that we talked about this topic. I know that it was actually several days ago at least. The whole idea of real time versus relative time when it comes to getting work done. Help.
Yeah, when we initially talked about it, took me for a loop because I had to think about like which has the more value from it. For me personally, I always think in real time, just when things are getting done. And that to me is like your deadlines, your end dates, your anything where you got to focus on. That's what I try to key on. But then when we talked about it, I kind of thought about it more over the weekend, and I can understand from a relative time perspective, like things go slow, things feel they go slow, things feel they go fast. But in the end, I'm still kind of like a real time person. Time is time. Whether you feel it goes fast or slow, I think understanding that in your deadline, your deadlines or your self-imposed deadlines or anything like that, that's what I think is more important.
This whole idea of real and relative time really intrigues me. Have you ever been working on something? You know it's 8 o'clock in the morning. You're in the midst of your first cup of coffee. At some point, you reach out, you grab that cup, and your Tim Hortons is just absolutely dead empty. And it's been empty for a while, and suddenly it's noon. It's just gone. That time, it was just gone. That's relative time. That's flow time.
Yeah. And I'm sure everyone that's listening, it's happened to her.
And if they haven't, then they're missing something.
For me, when that happens, it's not whether it's like a really good day or a really bad day or kind of didn't feel any work got done. Like it's just my mind was focused on the task at hand and getting stuff through. And like there are other things like getting my second cup of coffee at some point in the morning, getting a snack, or even getting up to stretch. for me, if I'm focused on something, I tend to kind of just, and it's really important to me, then I will focus on it and stay on it. Now, whether me focusing on it actually got any work done within those few hours, that all very depends on what was being done. I've had times where I got through so much work within the first 4 hours of the day where I didn't know what to do for the rest of the day. And other times I've gotten through where it's 8 hours afterwards I start and nothing got done. But the day just kind of ran away from me.
But which one did time actually, did you perceive the time moving faster or slower? That time when you didn't have anything to do in the afternoon.
Oh, time, like for that, yeah, time slowed down. Like, because it was me trying to find work, trying to find something to do, keep myself busy.
So if you were a customer waiting on that next release, if you were looking at if you've been promised a date by a team, we're going to release at the end of the next sprint, and it was really important to you, how would you perceive time?
Trying to put myself in the customer's shoes, because I don't think I've ever really experienced that. Most of the time when I figure out when it was releases is after I see the release notes for whatever apps I have. Like, oh, there's another release. Cool. If that's the sole thing if that's the only thing they're focused on, then yeah, I can imagine that their relative time would be slow. It would kind of, like, they would just fully anticipate what's going on. Whereas if they're like other things to do, they're keeping themselves busy, kind of, they're aware of the date, and they're all happy for that date to happen, but they're keeping themselves busy, then it comes along and sometimes, like, oh, the date's here. Awesome. And they didn't even really think about it. I've had some clients where that's exactly what happened. There was a delivery dates for a few releases, and every once in a while have the meetings, kind of give the updates of how things are going. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we deployed, and they were like, oh, the time just kind of flew by for them, because they weren't, although it was an important release for them and for their clients, their outside clients, it wasn't completely back of mind, because they let the team get the stuff done. They trusted the team to get the stuff done, and when it happened, it happened. So they were happy, though. It was good when all came through.
There are always different kinds of customers, but those people that are product owners, product management kinds of folks that are focused on bringing new features, new product to market, new releases, those sorts of things, that whole run up to that, especially if the work, the features themselves aren't already banked, is always a crapshoot. And therefore, there is always an immense amount of anticipation waiting on when the release gets staged so that they can determine whether or not they've been lying to people, we promised them this, versus what is actually going to get delivered. How do we rectify this scenario? Because very frankly, it does evoke that whole idea of real time versus relative time. We're waiting with anticipation versus it's what's really coming, and therefore we can plan and work at a steady pace, all of those good things.
I'm not too sure how could give them that, I guess, mindset or frame set. One of the clients I've worked, they've gone through their roadmap, they've understand what needs to be delivered, and there was one item where in the roadmap, one delivery, it was like later in the year, it was like in third quarter of the year, and they came around and it's like, well, could we do this sooner? So they were kind of anticipating, they wanted it there. And I just turned around, it's like, yeah, we could. Like, obviously there's going to have to be some trade-offs. You're probably not going to get what you want in between. You're going to have to do some shifting around. And they were very antsy, I guess, in having me and the team give them when it can happen. And it was interesting because we haven't even started planning it, writing stories. We've had a few stories written. Things were kind of in flux, but the amount of work was a lot bigger than a bread box than what we had. So there's no way we could give them like an exact date. So it was really the way we went about it kind of says like, well, we can get it done sooner. Let us work on it, and we'll let you know after a few sprints where we stand on how soon you can get it. I think giving them that, it just allowed them to think that, okay, we will get it sooner than what we initially planned and that we're working on it. I think that's probably not committing to a specific date, but saying that, yeah, we'll work on it, getting it sooner. Let them understand that. I think that's how you can kind of change that type of mindset.
As many of us who, and I know you have too, lived in the product world where people have product roadmaps where they have to go to market and talk about what's coming. And maybe they do that in specifics relatively soon. But even the glittering generalities have to at some point turn into something tangible, which means that we as technologists actually have to sync to that roadmap. And as a consumer, right? I guess this is me being ultra nerdy. I wake up at 4:00 in the morning. Actually, I wake up at 3:45. And the first thing I do is grab my phone and see what new things are coming in when I update my apps for the day, right? I know that's a tad crazy, but as people who work against product roadmaps, aren't we doing the same thing? Aren't we setting up a scenario where anticipation causes that shrinkage of time? And when we don't get what we want, we're causing all sorts of negative feelings. So we have to find a way of marrying those roadmaps to what we actually deliver.
Well, and you brought up a good point when you talked about like negative feelings, because if we go way back to our old waterfall days of such,
last week,
yesterday,
weren't we talking about independent test groups recently? Once upon a time, it isn't. Maybe I forgot. Maybe I hit my head. Sorry.
But no, and I think if you can actually tie in. You can probably tie in. I'm sure there's studies out there about it, like with negative feelings and the relative view of time. So if they feel that, like if say the clients or the customer product owners, whatever, feel that like they're just not, things aren't going to make it. We're running into, there's roadblocks left, right, and center. The sprint team won the super jackpot, and now they're all about to quit. Happy for them, but bad for the product because it's obviously not going to get delivered. I think if you want to help alleviate the kind of the feeling that the time is passing off longer, you don't have to keep everyone happy. I think if everyone's informed and know what's going on, then that's really what helps kind of keep that relative in real time kind of almost in sync, where they know how things are going. They're anticipating it. So yeah, time's going to go by a little faster, but they know that everything's kind of all in line. It's been a while since I've done philosophy, so I don't know if that even makes any sense. Like I said, like the one team I'm working with, we had a delivery date. We planned a delivery date. Well, we didn't plan it. We were told a delivery date, and we had to work against it. And there were challenges as we went along, but we didn't hide those challenges. We didn't kind of, we let everyone know about the risk, obviously, what's going on, what could happen, what might be missed, what might not be missed. And providing it in that message allowed it to, like, people would get upset, but they weren't angry. Right? And I always, the term when I always go, like, is someone upset or are they angry, is if they're upset, they just kind of, they know something's happened, not much we can do, or the team's working on it. Okay. Bad. Angry is that you've lost all trust from that person and now you got to rebuild it. So I think it's getting them, ensuring they don't get angry when bad things happen, let them be upset, but also let them know that it's being worked on. That should help kind of things move it along and either not be slow or not be fast.
Jeremy Berriault, before we wrap, relative time versus real time, is it a real thing that we have to consider as leaders and part of the agile world?
Me personally, see, it depends on whose eyes you look through on this. Like, so for the team, you want everything to be well-oiled, everything running, the team's working well to the point where, yeah, they just get the work done and they, like, the day kind of flashes by and they're still getting all the work done. So it doesn't feel like they're dragging. You want the product owners to kind of almost have that same type of feeling, but not have the anticipation like a 5-year-old at Christmas, where December 1st to December 25th drags on because the time is just like Christmas can't come soon enough. So I think it is something that I think we have to set expectations to kind of get both sides to one side where it feels like it's just flying by and everything's working well and everything's getting done. And to the other one to not anticipate it so much where like that's all they think about. Let them know that things are being done and it'll be done on time. Jeremy, how would people continue the conversation? They can continue the conversation with me through LinkedIn, Jeremy Berriault in Toronto, I'm the only one around. I'm on Twitter as well, @jberriault, and on my website where I blog as well. And I'll be blogging about this conversation at the same time at berriaultassociates.com.
Thanks again, Jeremy.
It's always a pleasure to be here, Tom. Next week, we'll talk with Jardena London. We will discuss her book, Cultivating Transformations, a leader's guide to connecting the soulful and the practical, and why being soulful in the workplace is critical for facilitating change. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?